Hello, Yade. My name is Olate Bigknife Antonio. I am a third year in the clinical psych department, and I'm going to be presenting on a part of my thesis research, which is looking at how to address climate change distress for an Indigenous population through the creation of a psychological intervention grounded in traditional ecological knowledge. So this is just a quick overview of what I will be talking through today. So psychological research, unsurprisingly, tells us that people are distressed due to climate change. But this distress is exacerbated for Indigenous people due to a lot of different reasons, and some of those being disproportionately affected by climate change, having a deeply embedded relationship with nature, and then also our access to knowledge and access to natural spaces and healing spaces becoming increasingly limited. Despite these realities, Native peoples remain incredibly resilient and are often at the forefront of many climate-related causes, and also traditional ecological knowledge plays an essential role in the response to climate change. So traditional ecological knowledge, or TEK, is a holistic knowledge base that guides nature engagement for Native peoples. It's a value system that is grounded in culture and is the reason why Native peoples were able to live sustainably for thousands of years before colonization. So in psychological research, there exists a discrepancy relating to nature connectedness. And so in general, being connected to nature is healthy for us, but for people who might experience more climate change distress, nature connection tends to exacerbate that distress. And so I felt like that was an important gap to address, especially in considering the disproportionate effects for Native peoples. And I felt that traditional ecological knowledge would be a good way to do that. So the first part of this project was a thematic analysis that occurred during the background research regarding TEK and coding for psychologically relevant principles. And those identified principles were community, cultural connection, self and cultural efficacy, reciprocity, and nature connection. So using those identified themes, I organized interviews with 3 TEK knowledge holders of different backgrounds, Native backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, professions, and their experiences with TEK to ask about their conceptualization and benefits regarding those TEK principles. From there, I did a framework analysis where I coded for emerging sub-themes related to those overarching themes across participants, and then also identified responses related to an Indigenous conceptualization of well-being. And so one of the way that well-being is conceptualized for Indigenous peoples is a balance between mind, body, spirit, and environment, and imbalance leads to psychological suffering. So this is the intervention framework that I came up with, and the overall goal is that an intervention grounded within Indigenous value and knowledge systems will increase nature connection for Native peoples without also increasing those distress levels so that they can engage more holistically and meaningfully with the environment, hopefully through like climate action and pro-environmental behaviors. So in the process of looking at the data, it was evident that all of these different themes were really intertwined and interconnected, but community was one of those themes that were harder to tease apart and is really at the core of both TEK and well-being. And so in this framework, community serves as more of like an orientation to the intervention. And then the rest of the intervention takes on more of a modular design organized by the TEK principles. So cultural connection, nature connection, self and cultural efficacy, and reciprocity. And so the reason for this is, or I guess the overall goal is that Native communities can adapt the intervention in a way that best fits the needs and the practices of their peoples. And so like, for the module of cultural connection specifically, an Indigenous community would recognize what the needs of their community is and also the strengths of that. And so within cultural connection, using the outline, or within each of the modules, it is outlined by mind, body, spirit, and environment, and specific practices that tend to increase those different aspects of well-being. And so taking their own place-based knowledge and practices and incorporating it into the framework to work with participants. Thank you. Any questions?
Anything surprising to you in your development of this?
Yeah, so she asked if anything was surprising in the development of it. I think yes and no. I think pieces of the like psychological effects for climate change and asking the participants about what they see being distressing is just like all of it is distressing, and it's a reality that Native peoples have continuously had to navigate and deal with in a lot of different ways. But I think one of the surprising things or interesting things is how nicely it mapped onto more of a psychological framework. And I think part of that being is so much of Indigenous knowledge is really grounded within all of these aspects that psychology sees as incredibly beneficial. And so it was just surprising at the same time, I don't know, I think speaks to that love that I have and many Native peoples have for their own culture and knowledge systems. Thank you.
Thanks for your interest in Montana Health Professionals for a Healthy Climate's annual conference. If you'd like to be kept up to date on monthly actions for climate and health in Montana, you can go to montanahphc.org/newsletters to sign up for our monthly newsletter or click the link in the description below. And don't forget to subscribe.